play by the rules of your game. What I mean by that is, in business, there are a set of rules that you have to adhere to. They're called laws, right? As to what does my service have to look like? What do I have to tell people? What do I have to list on my product? How much tax do you have to pay? Where do you have to pay it? Blah, 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 blah. The biggest reason why people will suggest get an accountant before you can afford one is for the situations where there are a set of rules that you don't know yet, and that's okay, but they do, where making a decision early on might save you a load of money down the line. I think it's a lot less important now than it was 40 years ago to have an accountant early on if you're doing a bootstrapped business. Because the way that the UK government has gone, there's not a lot of tax loopholes and savings and smart workarounds that work for businesses, unfortunately. But there are scenarios where, if it's possible, you might be able to set your business up in a different country, which is perfectly legal to do as long as you play within the rules. And so there's a list of requirements as to if you're allowed to do that or not. So if you are, it's not tax evasion. Or is it tax avoidance? One of these, so there's two types. There's tax evasion and tax avoidance. One of them is illegal, one of them is perfectly fine. It's just frowned upon. Now, this goes to many other things. So what's got me thinking about it today, it's day 5 of our Hardway project, so raising money for Great Ormond Street Hospital, and today we needed to lift, as a team, 100,000 kilograms of weight in the gym. And I was trying to figure out what's the rules. So we decided within the rules of the game, it has to be additional weight that is counted, not body weight. And that was pretty much it. So if you did a body weight squat, 0. If you did a squat with 20 kilos on your back, that's 20 kilos. But even though a leg press, as an example, where you're lying down, your body weight is negated, you can now add that onto the total. So like, why not use that as the rule for the thing? And there was no rule against unilateral movements. So for example, if you use a pulley machine, which has, a pulley, that's what it is, with pins, a pin pulley machine. Generally how they work, if yours does work like this, if you pull one side of it, if it's got 2 arms and you pull one of them, it's the same weight that moves, but it only moves half the distance. So now you can get double the stats on what you would do if you were rowing together, as an example. That's what's got me thinking about all of this. So what's relevant? What is this relevant for going forwards? I just want to extrapolate this to outside the sets of rules and outside what's expected. So there's an expectation, especially within business, of how things are done. In quote marks, how it's done. Like, this is just the way it's done. You've probably heard that before. In many cases, there is a best practice that is currently available right now that's been tried and tested. But as time and technology evolves, it might not be true forever, which is why you end up with some mega companies that are started by some really young people who are naive, who don't know how things are done, and they just go, well, to get to point B, why don't we just do this really obvious thing we now have the technology for? And the answer is you can. So if the technology has changed, there might just be a gap that you have seen and is really obvious to you, but the rest of the market can't see because of the way that they know things are done. And it wasn't possible any other way previously. So when it comes to marketing, for example, most people think there's only a few ways to do it. And it's true. You can boil this down into talk one-to-one or one-to-many is pretty much it, if you want to boil it down to telling people about your stuff. And then you can either do it yourself, you can either create content, you can pay other people to do it, You can do paid adverts and so on and so on. But like, in that list isn't standing outside of a shop in a cardboard box. But that was the thing to do 100 years ago. And it can really pay dividends, I think, to think, when you want to do something, how can this be achieved? And you list every possible way. And it might not be the most efficient or the most effective, but there might be a way that has massive leverage because it's unused. It's not common. Ben Francis was a fantastic example of this. At Gymshark, he created what's now taught at universities as influencer marketing. So when he was starting his company, he realized that the people that he watched on YouTube, that he looked up to, didn't have a set of gym clothes that they liked to wear. They didn't represent, any brand. So he was like, hey, I have this company printing the stuff. Can I send you guys some stuff? Like, I really like you. And they just said yes. And then that completely changed the entire industry of every type of celebrity advertisement. But it wasn't a thing before. Influencers weren't a thing. There was celebrity endorsement, which still happens today. Like, imagine you think David Beckham, Johnny Depp, that sort of thing for like big perfume brands and stuff like that. And that still happens, but it's not quite the same as influencer marketing. It's not quite as personal. And this was a situation where a naive person who didn't know how things were done saw an opportunity that just made sense to him because the technology had changed. And so I think it's really beautiful to come back to the basic story of, what is it I want to do? This is the way I want to do it in. Is there anything that's physically stopping me doing this? There are some fundamental laws of physics that will stop you doing some things, but it's not a lot. So like Elon did this famously for making batteries. He went to the largest battery manufacturers and was just like, this is ridiculous how much you're charging when the ingredients add up to like 10%. He's like, there's nothing stopping me by the laws of physics and the laws of the cost of these things that I can't do this cheaper. So he did. And then they became one of the largest battery manufacturers in the world. So sometimes you need an out-of-the-box approach that's within the laws. Now, it might not be within, there might not be any, like country laws, like laws within your, wherever you live, but there might be universal laws that you could be like, I've got to play within those rules, but other than the physical limits of the universe, why can't I physically achieve this? And I think that's a fantastic question to ask, because it enables you to think bigger, and it might not be the thing that you choose to do, but it might also spark something wonderful. So there you go. Some fun thoughts for today. Have a great day, guys. Peace.